Good evening, colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are going to delve into writing assessment items for secondary ordinary level. We look at how are we supposed to be designing competence-based questions for our learning to be effective. This webinar series is brought to you by LATAS and the British Council as part of our English Connect project that goes along with workshops. We have had workshops in Northwestern, Luapula, and Western provinces. And the upcoming should be Copperbelt and Northern Province. And so these webinars are complementary to this same effort. So we are welcoming you to this important topic. Our presenter is Mr. Richard Mono. Now, before I come to our presenter, allow me to bring one part that we need to know about British Council, that we expect everyone to be respectful in our conversations. These webinars are open for everyone in the language teaching fraternity, though preferably for Tata's members, but they are open for everyone. And so we urge everyone to be respectful in our deliberations, respectful to each other and to the presenter. When he's done presenting, we are going to have an opportunity to ask questions or make contributions, which is actually the hallmark of the whole program. So at this time, I'll invite our presenter, Mr. Mono, to pick it up.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and good evening, colleagues, once again. Okay, as indicated by the President, today we want to look at how to design competence-based assessments. As we are all aware, we are moving from the ordinary way of teaching as well as preparing assessments to what is known as competence-based. Now, I'll take you through on procedures on how to design a competence-based assessment. Basically, at the end of this session, I would expect each and every one of us in here to be able to identify the features of a CBC assessment in English language. I would also expect every participant in here to be able now to develop contextual skills-based items, as well as developing the ability to align questions with listening, speaking, reading, and writing skills. And then we shall end by applying rubrics and marking guides to competence-based kind of assessments. We can move on to the next slide, Mr. President. Thank you. Okay, so this just gives the outline of our presentation. This just gives an outline of our presentation. As you can see, the outline is given them. We are looking at the purpose of CBC assessments, characteristics of competence-based assessment question or item setting, types of CBC assessment questions or items, steps in constructing these questions as well as items, key elements of good CBC assessment. Okay, challenges in CBC assessment questions or item construction, and then my presentation shall end with a conclusion. We can move on, Mr. President, to the next slide. We are defining now. We have to define what an assessment is. Okay. We are saying supplying the principles and practice of assessment to design tasks to assess your learners' level and measure their progress. It is about using types of assessments, of which the dominant ones are two. That is formative as well as summative. So when you talk of assessment, this is just like a checkup. This is like a measuring bar. You want to see how much progress you have made with your learners. What are some of the challenges in order to allow you provide interventions? So that's why we have the two types of assessment, which is formative as well as summative. We can move on. Thank you. Now we've got what we call assessment for learning, colleagues. And by assessment for learning, we are saying this refers to measuring what learners have already learned at the end of a lesson, unit or course. It is summative, which is used to evaluate achievement. So assessment for learning, in English language, we know to say there is no single topic you can teach without giving an exercise at the end. It could be an exercise, it could be a project, or it could be some form of homework or dorm work for those who are in boarding schools. So this is just to assess learning. Was there progress during the lesson? Did pupils manage to grasp the concept that was being delivered? What is the purpose of this kind of assessment? We are saying to judge the learner's performance against set standards objectives. Remember, every lesson is got what we call set standards or short-term objectives. Objectives that you intend to achieve within the shortest possible time. To record progress and report outcomes, e.g. grades or certificates. To make decisions about promotion, selection, or certification. Examples of summative kind of exam, end of term, mid-term, national exams, or final project or tests in form of school-based assessment. So those are meant to award maybe a certificate or to measure who progresses to the next academic grade, or to know how to divide your pupils possibly according to classes. For example, when Form 1s are live in a school setup, you may teach them holistically. Let alone you assess them so that you know their needs, their capabilities, and then assign them classes based on their abilities. That is the purpose of summative kind of assessment. We can move on, Mr. President. Okay, there we go. So, colleagues, we continue looking at assessment for learning. We are saying this focuses on using assessment in support and improve, to support and improve learning as it happens. It is formative in nature. Formative simply means it's ongoing. That kind of assessment that we give as the lesson is progressing. Okay, we would ask questions, would ask people to contribute, or that kind of assessment which gives the teacher an idea as to how the lesson is flowing, whether you are talking to yourself or the learners are grasping the concept at hand. That is formative, which is an ongoing form of assessment within the lesson. The purpose is to give ongoing feedback that helps learners improve. It also helps teachers adjust teaching methods. So you realize to say, using the question and answer method, the pupils are left behind. The pupils are not able to get the concept that you are trying to deliver. Therefore, you don't necessarily need to wait into the next lesson. Within that lesson, you can change the approach based on the feedback through formative assessment, which is assessment within the lesson. So you can change. Wow, let me divert. Maybe I do group discussion. It may work. Maybe I go the lecture method. It may work. So formative assessment, in short, allows also the teacher to evaluate the method and approach being implemented in a particular lesson. Is it working? Is it failing? We can move on, Mr. President. Those are just examples which I've already alluded to. Okay, nature of CBA assessment. Now we are getting into the actual purpose of this presentation. We are saying it measures learner skills, knowledge, values, and attitudes. This is the difference between the traditional way of assessing learners as well as the CBC way of assessing learners. We are saying under CBC, we have to measure the learner's skill, knowledge, values, and attitudes. Measures application in a real world or real life situations or context. So you are going to realize to say most of the questions, especially under grammar, when you're dealing with the CBA, which is competence-based assessment, they are supposed to be scenario-based. Key question. Under CBC, we are saying, the question there is, what can learners do with the knowledge I have taught them than what learners are able to know at the end of the lesson? So you need, the questions should show competences. That's why the curriculum is called competence-based. So when you are examining, when you are assessing, the idea there is you are looking for certain key competences to come out. So a competence should be something that is pragmatic, something that can be observed, something that can be seen. We can move on, Mr. President. Thank you. Nature of continuous-based assessment continues from the previous slide. It does not emphasize on knowing, but it emphasizes on doing. So the learner has to do. It's also learner-centered and activity-based. Under competence-based curriculum, under based competence assessment, colleagues, learners have to be involved. It's hands-on kind of teaching, it's hands-on kind of learning, it's hands-on kind of assessing. Mr. President, we can move on. There is demonstrated. Thank you so much. Okay. Competence-based, we are further saying performance has to be seen in practice. So learners have to show certain skills. Learners have to show certain pedagogies. They must be seen. We are also saying competence-based has to be seen through demonstration, through interpretation and application. Where you need to deal with recording, then you have to record facts here. Okay, recording has not been completely done away with. It is still there. But then factual information, people should be able to show competences in bringing to the fore certain facts that were presented before them. We can move on, Mr. President. Thank you. The purpose of different types of assessment in CBC. We are saying the purpose number one is to monitor real-time learning and provide ongoing feedback. Okay, so when you are talking about monitor real-time learning, colleagues, here you are talking about formative kind of assessment, not summative, no. We are also saying helps identify learner strengths and weaknesses and adjust teaching accordingly. It encourages self-reflection and improvement. You don't necessarily need to wait until the end of the month, until the end of the term to realize to say people do not understand what you were presenting before them. Within the lesson, you should, a good teacher, with his or her sort, should be able to determine to say, I think here I'm talking to myself. I've left my pupils as an alien. I've left my pupils on their own. How do you get to know that? It is through formative assessment, oral questions, simple written tasks, group discussion, group presentations, and such kind of things. We are saying to evaluate what learners have achieved at the end of the learning period, which is summative now. So at the end of the learning period, we give, for example, in our setup, we have got what we call monthly tests, mid-term tests, end-of-term tests, and then we have got national public examination tests. All these are forms of assessments. For public examination, the idea there is to certify, to give someone a certificate at the right level if they meet the competences for that particular exam. Mr. President, we can move on to the next. There we go. We are still looking at the different types of, the purpose of different types of assessment. What is the purpose? To identify learners' existing knowledge, skills, and misconceptions before teaching begins. That's why lessons under CBC have to begin by throwing a problem to the pupils. Present a scenario before the pupils. Ask the pupils how they would address a scenario. For example, we know to say the first topic in Form 1 under competence-based is greetings. You enter class, okay? You just give pupils a scenario. Okay, there you are. You have been sent to the office of the head teacher. But then you meet this man who works in the school tuck shop. Okay, upon meeting them, what would you do? Would you just pass? What would you really do? Then the pupils will start giving you feedback. No, sir, no, madam. You greet them. Okay, since he's an elder, this man who sells in the school tuck shop, but he's not a teacher, but he's an elder person. How are you going to greet them? Pupils will bring different ideas. Okay, you ask them, are you going to greet them the same way you greet your peer in class? They will give you feedback. There now, you are trying to identify the knowledge, which we call prerequisite knowledge, that the learners already possess, even before you impart the new knowledge into their minds. So you find to say they'll appreciate the lesson more when you begin with what they already know, and then you go into what they may not know. Okay, we are saying helps in planning, lessons tailored to learners' needs. That is formative assessment. Okay, continuous assessment, you're saying to assess learners over time through various activities and tasks, supports the development of competences and practical skills, not just rote memorization. Under CBC, colleagues, we are completely moving away from mere memorization. We are now testing skills, we are testing values, we are testing experiences. Pupils have to show what they are able to do with the knowledge that they have. If we have taught pupils on adjectives, how are they able to use the knowledge on adjectives in their real life situations? We can move on, Mr. President. Thank you. Key features of a CBC assessment focuses on communication and real life use of English. So communication must come out. I'm pretty sure all of us fellow linguists who are gathered here, when we were doing our studies at some level, we came across this concept of competence kind of communication, okay, where the correctness of grammar is not the determining factor, but the fact that you have communicated becomes of significance. Good. So this is what we are bringing out here. We're saying it focuses on communication. The pupil must be able to communicate. The pupil must be able to apply the learned language skills into real life situations. It integrates skills rather than isolated drills. It encourages critical thinking and creativity. Good. Now, I've got a question here. I've got a very simple question here. Which of the following questions is CBC? And why do you say so? Okay? You can put the answer in the chat and I'll be able to see. Question 1 is saying, define a noun. Define a noun. Question B is saying, identify nouns in a short paragraph about your school. Identify nouns in a short paragraph about your school. Kindly may I have volunteers to throw in responses. Only 1, definition of a noun. Is it CBC? Or B, identifying nouns which are found in a short paragraph, and that paragraph is talking about your school. We'll be able to see those in the chats. Okay, I can see already some have responded. Let me just try to check. Mr. President, I'm loading to see the responses. B, because A is memorization. Thank you, IC. HM also, that's Henry Mpundu, says B. Some more. Okay, there is another B from Matilda Mwerwa. Okay, another B from Desmond Njovu. Labeka Rushinga, thank you. B also. Mainam Sonda, thank you. B also. Let's have the last one. We shall be interactive at some point. Thank you. Patience Mwashi. B as well as Costa Murea. Thank you, Doc. B, because C, it compels learners to think and learn by doing. Thank you so much, colleagues. We can now go back to the lesson. It's very clear from the responses that my fellow linguists, we understand what must be involved in competence-based form of assessments. Mr. President, we can go on. Agnes Piri, thank you. I see you with the correct answer. Differences between traditional assessment and CBA. I want us to be very clear here, okay? I've sampled a few assessment items for various schools across the country. I want to confess here that a lot of us have not yet moved from traditional way of testing. By and large, I think we were misled by what was shared on various social media platforms in the name of a specimen, which specimen actually CDC later on dispelled as having no blessings from them. Now, let's analyze this. We are saying competence-based assessment encourages problem solving, is knowledge focused, is skill and application focused, standardized tests, real tests, memorization. Good. Now, here I have listed problem solving, knowledge focused, skill application focused, standardized tests, real tasks, memorization. There are 6 items there which are from both ways or approaches of testing. That is the traditional approach as well as the CBA approach. Now, again, let's go back to our chart. I want you to categorize by way of number which ones are competence-based, meaning those you are going to leave out are going to be traditional approaches to assessing learners. In our inbox, in our chat box, let's identify what I just listed the numbers. If it is 10, 11, 13, 14, just indicate to me to say 10, 11, 15, and 12 are competence-based, meaning I will know to say the numbers you have left out are non-competence-based. I want to see how we do it. The chart is still empty. Agnes Speed, where are you? Dr. Murea, let's throw in something here. Let's throw in something here. Okay, we have one response. Let me open it.
So we can
2,
simply
5.
match. We can match. So if number 1 is the problem solving, if it matches with competence based, you just write 1A. It goes with. So if it's number 2, which one does it go with? Is it A or B? Like that.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that. So there we go. Of course, others were doing okay. Okay. I'm getting answers here. 1, 2, 5. Okay, A. 1, 2, 5, A. 1, 3, 4, and 5. Doc doesn't indicate. Okay, so assume doc means these are A. 1, 3, 5, A. 1, 3, 4, 5. These are CBC. Okay, Patience Mwanshi just specifies to say 1, 3, 4, and 5 are CBC. 1, 3, 5 are CBC. 1, 5, 4. There we go. Let me have one more response. Arakui Pompa, guys. Don't withhold. There are no wrong answers under adult education. Hangua, Basio. 1, 3, 5 are CBC. Patrick Mloke. 1, 3, 5. Okay. Bethra in Mwenya. 1, 3, 4, and 5 are CBC. 1, 3, 5. 1, 3, 5. Good. Thank you so much, colleagues, for the responses given. So, it's very clear when you talk about problem solving, okay? We know to say problem solving, skill and application focused. We know to say real world tasks. All these are CBC. Clearly, we know to say CBC does not promote memorization. Okay, so that is what we need to understand there. CBC would want to develop learners who are able to solve problems using the language. Okay, CBC is not so much interested about the knowledge learners would get. It is interested about what the learners are able to do with the skills that they possess. It's not about what a learner is able to know, but what a learner is able to do with the knowledge and skills they have acquired. Okay, so there we go. We shall come back to this when we shall be wrapping up. Mr. President, we can move on. Thank you. Benefits of competence-based assessment. Real-world relevance, learner-centered learning, measurable outcomes, encourages communication and collaboration, encourages critical thinking and self-direction. I would just want to emphasize on the last point. Encourages critical thinking and self-direction. Under CBC colleagues, learners are in control of the learning process. That's why under CBC, those of you who are teaching Form 1, if you are still at the center of the learning process, then you should know that there is a problem somewhere. Otherwise, the role of the teacher has been reduced to that of a facilitator. Your job is to facilitate the learning process. Your job is to provoke the minds of the learners. Then the learners now take center stage. And then you shall just provide intermediaries, just guide, chipping in here and there. And then we know our lesson plan, that there is a part now where you come in as a teacher to now guide and conclude the lesson, so that you show the pupils now which one is the correct direction. After the pupils have brought through what they have, after the pupils have argued, after the pupils have digested, after pupils have brainstormed, you allow them think and think out loud, for heaven's sake, without your interference. Your interference will just come at the end. As you conclude the lesson now, you guide and show them the way. Mr. President, we can move on. Thank you. Characteristics of CBA questions. So, as I'm presenting here, I want all of us to go back. We wrote end of term, and possibly for some schools, we have even written monthly tests. I want you to check back what you gave the learners, whether it fits in what we are discussing here or not. Number one, real life situation focus. We've seen tests whereby a teacher just gets some questions, maybe from a paper that was from a passage that happened in Nigeria, as an example. The passage is talking about the Khoi people of this country, whatever it is. And you get that passage. CBC colleagues does not promote such. You need to localize even the passages that you give pupils. Even the scenarios that you set, they must be scenarios that are closer to the pupils. In your school setup, that's why this idea of just requesting for tests, I'm in Wapura and I request for a test prepared at stage boarding. If I did that, I should just use that as a template to guide me on how to prepare. Because the scenario in stage is totally different from the scenario here. The culture of the pupils in stage is not the culture of my pupils at Msonda Girls. So CBC focuses on real life situations. It uses knowledge, skills, and attitude, involve problem solving. It's more complex. Thinking about your actions. Learners have to think about their actions before they do anything. Mr. President, in the interest of time, we can move on. Scenario-based questions. Okay, we shall demonstrate later on. Project-based tasks, where you give learners projects. Learners should have a box file for actually filing those projects that we give them, the reports that they are going to generate at the end of the projects we give them. Practical demonstrations through role plays. Reflective or self-assessment prompts, all these things should be there. Performance-based, that's the observation checklist. Some of these assessments you need to observe. That's why we realize to say, how are you going to evaluate? But there's one you may mute yourself. Thank you so much, my brother. So we are saying there are times where even on your lesson plan, you are going to say, what will be the evaluation criteria you are going to use here? It's observation. So you observe as learners are doing this role play, and you are doing a checklist, so that at the end of the day, you provide guidance. Mr. President, we can move on to the next. Thank you. Here is an example of a CBC question Okay, it's coming from section A, which is grammar. For the record, this was one of the questions that appeared in my end of term test for Form 1 at my school, prepared by the same me. Answer each question as directed in this section. Now, here is the situation here. Your class is on duty watering the school garden. You find your friend drawing water, but you decide to push her away, and she hates herself. You did all this because you feel you are powerful and can bully anyone around. The following day, she confronts you to express her displeasure over your unruly and violent behavior. You realize you did not act politely and appropriately towards your friend. Write a brief statement of apology. Now, all of us here who are having Form 1 classes, you know to say there is a topic where you teach people on how to apologize. So, when you have such kind of a question, and we are now moving on to preparing rubrics, you are not going to have, is carrying 2 marks, but you're not going to have one definite answer to say all pupils, all the 50 pupils in my class should write like this. That would be wrong, a wrong approach to marking a competence-based assessment. What you need to do here, your marking guide should emphasize on the competence coming out. So some pupils are going to say, my friend, I really regret what I did to you yesterday. Kindly find room in your heart to forgive me. That's fine. Some are just going to say, I'm really sorry for what I did yesterday. The competence there you are examining is the competence of showing remorse, the competence of apologizing. So as long as the learner brings out that competence, regardless of the grammatical shortfalls, you're going to award either half a mark, either a mark, depending. Then those who are going to come out clearly with proper construction, those are the ones who are going to get total marks. That's why you're going to realize as we go on to say, under CBC, it will actually be difficult for pupils to fail subjects like English, because the interest is the competence, not necessarily the correctness of grammar. Yes, the correctness of grammar will favor those who are accurate in scoring higher marks. But as long as the pupil is able to bring forward the competence ya fuma, competence ya liboni ya zua, it comes out, then that learner deserves a mark. That is the way it is. So this one, those with limited vocabulary are just going to say sorry, and they end there. The competence colleagues has come out. That people is apologizing, but then they have not come out clearly. So you're not going to give them total marks. No. Let's move on to the next, President. Okay. We are saying here, objective multiple choice matching. These are types of assessment items. Constructed response, short, wrong answers, performance tasks, that's role plays, writing tasks. Example, choose the correctly punctuated sentence from the sentences given below. Okay, we can move on to our President. Writing good multiple choice questions. Now, let's not misunderstand each other here. It's not correct to say under CBC there is no more multiple choice. Multiple choice still exists. However, you are going to notice that it has extremely been reduced. Even under comprehension, you're not going to have so many questions requiring multiple choice, but it is still there. It is still part of CBC. Guidelines under multiple choice questions, we are saying use everyday English. That's number 1. Number 2, we are saying test understanding, not memory. Ensure one correct answer. Keep distractors realistic. We know what distractors are, but there are situations whereby distractors are not even related to the correct answer. Distractors have to be realistic. They should be closer to the correct answer as much as possible. Look at this multiple choice kind of a question. Which sentences are correct? First said, I like mangoes, but not bananas. B, I like mangoes, but not bananas. C, after eating, we went to play football. D, after eating, we went to play football. Okay, now, from these sentences, let's come to the chat box again. Which ones are correct? Let me see. Which of these A, B, C, D? Which sentences are correct? I just want you to indicate the ones you feel are correct. There we go. There we go. Let's be quick. El Clasico is in the second half. Maybe we can watch the last part. BD, okay. Basila says BD, 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 BD. Thank you so much, colleagues. So it's very clear that B and D are the correct answers here. So this is multiple choice. I want you to get me very clear. This is a multiple choice kind of question. But look at the way the question is framed. It's actually a construction. It's testing on the competence of punctuation as well as sentence construction. So the skill is punctuation, sentence construction. So it's not just multiple choice. This does not require a pupil to memorize anything. It requires a pupil to have the skill of punctuation, the skill of sentence construction, and then now we see this pupil applying this skill in this kind of concept. I want us to follow each other very well so that from now onwards, we can be able to prepare better competence. Thank you, Madam Kabukabu. Better competence-based kind of assessments. And the British Council is so rich on such materials. All you need to do is not to download them as they are. You customize them, you localize them. Mr. President, we can go on. Thank you. Constructed response questions. We are saying rewrites are there, summaries there, clause, lexis, filling in the blanks, composition, speaking tasks, listening tasks, isn't it? For example, write a paragraph explaining how to stay safe online. You know, we are dealing with a generation that is so closer to cyberspace. So you can ask them, how can you stay safe while it's online? Write a paragraph, okay? Tips, provide a rubric for marking. So now you need a rubric which will act as an anchor to your marking guide. So the rubric should clearly show how your essay, your marking should be done. And your rubric should guide at what point can you award a mark, at what point can you award half, at what point can you award 2 marks, at what point can you award 4 if the total is 4. So you align with the competences that you are looking for and all such related items. Mr. President, we can move on. Performance-based tasks include role-playing, a conversation on giving directions. So you call these pupils. Good. We are at Msonda Girls. How do you move from Msonda Girls up to the lay-by, the market? And every pupil is aware of that. Now imagine under this kind of question you ask to say, imagine you are at a city market. Show direction, explain, showing someone the direction on how to go to Soweto. But now you are in Ruena, you are in Katete, and your pupils have never been to Lusaka. That's what we are saying. Localize the whole thing. Bring it closer to home. Bring scenarios that pupils understand. Ask pupils, how do you show someone who has never been to the head teacher's office how they can move from Form 1A up to the head teacher's office? Present a short talk about hygiene. Okay, those are just examples. Perform a dialogue showing an apology. A friend offers you a drink, but you are not thirsty. What would you say? These are performance-based tasks that you can give to the learners in order for them to perform. This is a rubric now. On my right of the screen is a rubric. Excellent pronunciation, clear ideas, you give 4. Good with minor errors, you give 3. Limited vocabulary, you give 2. Hard to understand, you give 1. So have you seen that a 0 becomes difficult because, especially with the coming in of failing at grade 7, I'm pretty sure we remember to say these Form 1s we are having, their friends could not make it because of the revised policy on the way they progress, which was automatic progression. So, you know, to say for someone who is able actually to read even with his struggles, they will be able to bring out a certain competence and can still score a 1. So the rubric, which is the marking guide, should be very clear to say, at this point, I can award such kind of a mark. At this point, I can award such kind of a mark. That's why competence-based require a lot of energy, a lot of commitment just to come up with this rubric, marking guide. As a teacher, you really need to be settled in your mind. You really need to be at peace with your work. Otherwise, if you are not at peace with your work, you may realize to say CBC may not be your portion. But it's the simplest thing to do. We can move on, Mr. President. Grammar is assessed in context. So grammar is assessed in context. For English language, I must hasten to indicate to say, at grade 9 level, there is that section, which is usually section A in paper 2, contextual communication and grammar. The contextual communication part is what has actually been emphasized on under CBC, except if you check under grade 9, it is examined under multiple choice. But in CBC now, you want the learner to come out. You want the learner to be the one now coming out on what they would say or how they would behave or react in a particular context. So I'm saying change the verb to the past tense, write 2 sentences describing what you did yesterday. Okay, now you want people to use the past tense. Rearrange these ways to make a correct sentence. Book, reading, Mary is a. Rewrite using however. It was raining, we went out to play. Focus areas, parts of speech, tense, agreement, and connectors. So here basically we are saying you want learners to bring out these skills. Change the verb to the past tense. So you write the verb have. You ask the learners, let us change this verb to the past tense. Write 2 sentences describing what you did yesterday. Now learners have to bring out the competence on how to use the past tense here. That is what you are interested in. Rearrange, okay? This is logical reasoning. The logical reasoning. So a learner, book, reading, Mary is a. So learners should reconnect this. Mary is reading a book. Critical thinking is there. Logical reasoning application is there. For us in the linguistic world, all these things are not new. In the past, this was actually English paper 3 in grade 9 for those of us who did our education a little longer than today. President, we can move on. Good. Reading comprehension. Guidelines. Use short, relevant passages. Include literal, inferential, evaluative questions. Example, read a passage about waste management and answer questions. Okay, so the passage is there on waste management. Just like I said, colleagues, this requires effort from us, all of us for that matter, because you are not going to get a passage anyhow. Bring a passage which is relevant to the learners. Bring a passage which is relevant in a particular context. Bring a passage which is relevant to the cultural norms of the society or community you are operating under. Here are the example questions. According to the passage, why is it important to manage waste properly? This is comprehension, colleagues. Question 1, multiple choice. But remember, area owner indicated to say under CBC, multiple choices still exist. But it has been diluted, it has been reduced, and it has been pushed into other spheres. It has been pushed into other spheres. Let us just look at question 2. Question 2 is saying, mention 2 ways people can reduce the amount of rubbish in their communities. So the answer has to be gotten from the passage. The learner has to get the answer from the passage. Mr. President, we can make progress. Writing assessment, composition types, we have descriptive, expository, narrative, functional, situational composition such as letters, reports, articles, speeches, profiles, CVs, etc. All these things still exist. I don't need to labor a lot on this. This is what we have been doing for years, all of us. Example, write a letter suggesting ways to improve sanitation. Good. Sanitation at school. We can move on, Mr. President. Here are the steps that you need to follow when you're constructing a CBA. That's competence-based assessment. Identify the competence from the syllabus. Colleagues, if you want to succeed under CBC, don't devote yourself from the syllabus. That's number 1. And don't hate reading. CBC requires a lot of reading, a lot of research. Then after you identify the competence, break it into specific skills and indicators. The competence is broad. Break it into small pieces and particles. Design realistic contexts or situations. I belabored this point by saying scenarios should be familiar to the learners. Scenarios should make sense to your pupils. Write clear instructions or questions. Don't confuse pupils, whereby pupils don't even know what you are looking for. Pupils don't even know what you want. The instruction should be very clear so that pupils give you what you are looking for. In most cases, we complain to say, no, these children don't understand. These children you have given me. No, in another fireka. But look at your instructions. First of all, you as a teacher, you were all over the place. And the pupils have just followed suit. So first of all, give clear instructions. And then we are saying develop a scoring guide or rubric. In CBC, we don't necessarily deal with a marking key. We deal with a scoring rubric to say, if a pupil does this, I will do our award this. If a pupil again does this, I will award this. And it goes on and on and on. Our president, we can move. Thank you. Okay. Key elements of good CBC questions, we are saying relevance. The question must be relevant. The question must be efficient. The question must be objective. The question must be specific. And the question must be neutral. By neutral, what we mean is it shouldn't favor one group of pupils against the other. For example, those who come Kumayadi find the question relatively easy because Kumayadi, they understand what chlorine is. But those from compounds where they have to drink water from shallow wells and have no idea on what chlorine is cannot have an idea. No, it must be neutral. The other aspect is a good CBC question should not feel one group of learners uncomfortable, whereby maybe the disabled, if you've got the disabled learners in your class, they become uncomfortable, or the question makes one gender uncomfortable over the other. Maybe a question makes girls so uncomfortable. It must be neutral. We can move, our president. Another sample here. Sample question. Again, it was coming from Apology. You accidentally bumped into your classmate and made them drop their books. Later that day, you noticed, okay, so these were 2 in 1. You accidentally bumped into your classmate and made them drop their books. Okay? So we're saying, question, write a short apology note of 5 to 6 sentences to the classmate whose books you dropped. Write a short statement of apology. Okay, and the length is given. Look at the rubric. Write a short apology note. How many sentences? 5 to 6. Okay, this other one will fall under the next one. Miss Masiku comes to class dressed elegantly and looking extremely classic. You fail to hold yourself and decide to compliment her on her nice attire. Write a short compliment, 4 to 5 sentences to the madam. The total amount of marks was 3 marks. Now, those handling CBC, you understand to say compliments are actually taught. There's a topic there on how to issue a statement of compliment to somebody. 3 marks, 4 to 5 sentences to appreciate the madam's attire. So this question is coming direct from my test as well. This madam actually teaches Form 1A at my school. So the pupils understand the situation. I don't need to use the name of a teacher who is not even in my school. I try to bring it closer to home so that pupils can appreciate the context, appreciate the scenario, and appreciate the whole matter. That is the purpose of CBC. It must be, every question you prepare must be relevant to the context under which it is being examined. Can move on, President. Sample question continues. While seated in class, Chimwemwe and Tepiwa start fighting over a missing pen. Later on, your great teacher comes in and asks for a brief report on what transpired. You are one of the key witnesses as you were there when everything happened. Write a short report by using the past continuous tense and the simple past tense correctly to complete this. Look at now, the question comes. Yesterday at 10 hours, while I, in brackets, studied in class, I, in brackets, see Chimwemwe hitting Tapiwa with a juice bottle. Tapiwa, in brackets, try to duck it, but it hit her on the forehead. 4 marks. So now, you see, instead of just asking people to say, change the following verbs from past to past continuous or from present to past, you want them to bring the competence in writing. You want the competence to come out through sentence construction by completing the given sentences. This is the beautiful approach to preparing a CBC lesson. Anything less than that, you'll be doing the traditional approach, which is memorizing centered, which just promotes which is knowledge based purely. But President, we can move on. Okay. Scoring of CBA questions, use rubrics, not just right or wrong marking. So I've emphasized that to say the rubric should provide for the competency. No, the grammar might be wrong. The vocabulary might be limited, but does the learner try to bring out the competence I'm looking for? Levels of performance from excellent to needs improvement. So there are learners who will need your attention. There are learners who will need remedial work. The rubric will cater for all those. Consider the competence regardless of grammatical errors. That is key. The last bullet, colleagues, is the most important there. We can move on, Mr. President. Okay. Challenges with learning competence-based assessment. Okay, so you're saying competence definition, difficult to break down and measure complex skills. Sometimes as teachers, we struggle to break down these key competences in the syllabus into small components that can be applied to learners. So sometimes we give learners kind of questions that are overloaded to an extent whereby both the teacher and the learners are lost. Remember, we are dealing with small minds, 11, 12, 13-year-olds. We really need to break these competences into small particles that learners are going to appreciate and understand. Teacher skills, limited training in designing CBC tasks, which LATAS is addressing through such kind of webinars. Resources, lack of materials, reliability, difficult ensuring consistent marking, class size, some of us are teaching classes over 100. Real life application, designing authentic tasks is demanding. Just like I said, I promise you it needs you to have a cold head, a cool mind to prepare a CBC test worthy its sort. You really need to take time. You really need to be settled. You really need to be in your top condition, both mentally as well as physically. Record keeping, continuous tracking is time intensive. You even need to keep people's box files. Alignment, some tasks don't match learning competences. So we just ask pupils for the sake of asking, which is wrong. These challenges can be sorted out. You can provide challenges in the chat below. What are some of the solutions to these challenges outlined above? Our President, we can move on. Okay. Sample rubric. So here we are now, we have a sample rubric, listening comprehension, ability to listen attentively and understand spoken information. Those who are going to score excellent should be able to listen actively, recall main ideas, details, and draws correcting inferences. Those who are going to score 3, which is good, listen attentively, recalls main ideas with minor errors. How about those who are going to score 2? Satisfactory. Those scoring 2 who are going to write to fall under the category on satisfactory, we are saying for these, number 1, we are saying these are supposed to show the skill of understand some information, but misses key points or instructions. Need improvement. Struggles to follow or understand spoken information. So these now you find to say they are going to be in the category of scoring only 1 mark. We can move on to the next, Mr. President. Okay. Reflection and wrap up. Takeaways. What are some of the take homes? CBC promotes communication and creativity. We've emphasized that. Each item must test a particular competence. Real life relevance makes learning meaningful and more interesting. These are some of the things that we need to understand as we are preparing tests. Write a story about the pupils. Write even comprehension. Write your own story about an incident which happened in Form 1. Maybe there was this Form 1, you were in a boarding school and they came, she was crying her lungs out, wanting to go home the very day. Write a story about that and then ask questions. You will see how interested people will be to read that story over and over and even to answer questions. There we go, our president. We are almost coming to an end. As we know, the end. Thank you so much for your attention. I will now invite the president to moderate as we go into question and answer session. Mr. President, I call upon you to moderate the question session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the elaborate this presentation. Now we are inviting questions as well as comments or contributions. This is your time. You can use the raise your hand feature on the platform, or you can type your question in the chat box. If you are in a noisy place, or you can, for some reason there's something wrong, your audio system isn't working, please just use the chat box. We can read out the questions and the presenter can respond. If you have a contribution, even that we can read it out so that others can benefit. So this is the time for questions and comments. Questions? If the raise your hand feature isn't very functional on your device, you can simply unmute yourself and just
Mr.
speak.
President.
Yes, Mr. Mon.
Just a contribution based on what has been presented. I think Mr. Mono belabored to explain that it's important that we don't detach ourselves from the syllabus because every competence that we are to examine under the competence-based curriculum and assessments has to match with what is in the syllabus. So therefore, the specific competences that are in the syllabus, each one of them has got a specific standard to be met. So once we identify the specific competence we are looking at, and we want to examine the learners on, there is a standard that has been set. Are they able to do it correctly or accordingly, as has been stated in the syllabus? So in some ways, I want to contribute that the specific standard is also a rubric that has been set, like Mr. Mono was trying to explain, that much as the learners will not come out clearly, but is that rubric or that set standard being met? If it is being met, then we will grade it according to the competences that Mr. Mono was talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mono. Anyone else with a question or a contribution? Okay, so in the chat box, there are only commendations. This was a powerful presentation, very good presentation, opened our minds, and so on. Please, if you have anything to contribute or a question, you are free to use the platform, either the chat or okay. My parts, okay. The syllabus audit for Form 1 classes should be intensified as I have realized to the most our teachers are still glued to the traditional outcome-based curriculum, then the rubrics have to. Okay, let me just go through this message again. So the message from Dr. Okay. So the rubrics have a complete departure from the previous teaching of English as second language. We much looking at positive linguistic ability. So this needs to a complete overhaul. Okay. We need to do an overhaul on in our materials preparations. Okay. Yeah. So communicative competences. Okay, that is from Dr. Mleya. He's in a noise area. He's saying most of us are still glued to outcome-based, and so as a result, we need a lot of overhaul change to the rubrics so that we focus on linguistic ability. Okay, any other?
I think there are questions in the chat box, Mr. President. Can I read them out?
Please go ahead.
So from Madam Rebecca Rushingam, it says, is ECZ going to send us the specimen for the national exam? Mr. Mono, take note of that. Then the other one is, how can I involve my learners because they are quiet half the time? So, Mr. Presenter, those are the two questions for now, then we'll read others that are coming. Mr. Richo Mono, are you there?
Okay, let's see if we still have him.
I think we lost him a bit.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have lost our presenter. Okay.
Yes, I also want to make a contribution.
Please go ahead.
Hello. I feel there was so much a rush in implementing this curriculum without looking at the necessities that the implementer on the ground would use. If, as a team, we can go back and create material, proper material that would guide, starting from the syllabus, even if the modules are coming up, but the syllabus should state clearly what the teacher is supposed to use. That way, it will be able to guide the teacher. Unlike what is on the ground, the teacher is learning at the same time with the learner. It is like guessing what to do, guesswork in short. So I think ECZ should play a very big role in this arrangement so that what is presented to the teacher is what would be ideal to be given to the learners and not giving the teacher guesswork on what to do. I think that's my contribution.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, so just to answer, I think that other question, going to send us a statement for national exams. This one is a definite yes. ECZ is still, I think they are winding up with the O-level, the O-level assessment. I think you have, is it called assessment syllabus, examination syllabus that we have. We have for junior and senior in our schools. I think the junior one is green, some kind of light green, and then the senior one is purple. I think those are being revised so that we have the competence-based one. But of course, because competence-based is a new kind of thing, people had to do a lot of research and coming together. I think that one will be there. The first CBC examinations will be in 2028 for O level, but I'm sure so by then I'm sure it may be a year even before, by next year we should expect something from ECZ. There is still the A-level part. That one is also still being developed. And as we have had it in this country, A-levels have only been for science and mathematics. So yes, I get you, Susan. Yeah, some things may have been rushed. That's why, as LATAS, we have come on board to try and do orientations and sensitizations within our circles, mostly focusing on language teaching so that we close these gaps so that the teacher may have an upper hand knowledge and be able to help the learners properly. Okay. Is there another question? Slides will be shared in the platform, no problem. Okay, Nasidele. Listening and speaking lesson does not really come out since the learners can't listen and speak. I just moved to teach in rural areas. Well, listening and speaking, you have to teach it. I think the next assessment syllabus, you will find that you have to assess this listening and speaking. In the other continents and in other countries where CBC is being implemented, listening and speaking are tested, are examined. So we have to teach because, for example, you have to teach the children how to greet each other and how to greet elderly people, formal and informal greetings, how to describe processes, how to give directions, all those things, how to answer phone calls properly. All those you have to, it's a requirement we have to teach. And some parts you have to teach them before. There is that sequence that you must follow. Okay. The big challenge is, okay, how to break small components. It is it me, the teacher, to create the rubric, or is there a standard? Of course, there will be a standard, but we can, at the moment, there rubrics are there. Just search the internet. They are there. If the standards are usually you create the situations as a teacher, and then in terms of grading on the rubric, the learners should be able to know what is being expected of them. Is it just vocabulary? Is it expression, voice, projection, all those things? If it's a performance based, then they must know that you are looking for people who, during a performance, they must be audible, they must express themselves clearly, and they must use the correct language, the correct tone, and so on. Okay. Let me see. This has to be intensified. Okay. Yeah, we'll do our best. Okay. Norm referencing. Yeah. So in Europe, they have what they call, I'm reacting to Dr. Mleya's post in the chat box. Finally, the assessment now should be both norm referenced and criterion referenced in the CBC. Quite a mammoth task now. Initially, we were just preparing criterion referenced tests, despite the emphasis of OBC. So the norm reference system, in Europe, they have what they call, the Council of Europe came up with a concept and a reference that they call the common European framework of reference for language teaching. So whether you are learning Portuguese, whether you are learning Danish, French, or English, they have the same reference, frame of reference. If they call you your A1, that is your level, your proficiency level of French. So they are descriptors for each level in terms of speaking, in terms of writing, in terms of reading. So they are descriptors for you to be called A1 or A2. So they range from A1, A2, those are beginners, B1, B2, intermediate, and then C1, C2, advanced, and then there is expert or fluent. So yes, that is what he's talking about, the norm reference system. So there must be something that they call, this is a normal reference. A person who is said to be B2 must have these descriptors, must reach this level of understanding spoken, written, and also expressing themselves. Okay. Limited exposure. Questions based on what the students are familiar with is good, but has its disadvantage. There will be limited or no exposure to the students. Of course, wow. The reality, localization is important. A familiar environment is important for learning, because that way they can apply it beyond the classroom. But if they are exposed to, of course, as they improve, as they gain more knowledge, then it will be safer. We build. Remember, we are building from a novice to an expert. So there are levels of building until they are familiar. For example, you cannot teach how to write a paragraph before you have taught the parts of the speech. So we have to build, even exposure, you build from scratch. Okay, is there any other? I think I've seen any other? There are no other postings in the chat. I cannot see in hand. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, now next week, we're trying to confirm with the presenter. We would want to look at examine the lesson plan itself, that new one which came out in the module. We want to pick it one by one, lesson planning. So the British Council theme of the month is planning lessons and courses. So want to delve into the lesson plan and then how we are going to link it to the assessment. We're trying to confirm with the presenter, and then we'll give you the presenter's name, and probably a poster will be running starting probably tomorrow. Okay. We can go back to this. I hope people were able to finish to complete the poll that we shared. Please, for further readings, if you check our group, these references are there. Assessing speaking and writing, designing effective assessment tasks, using rubrics in language assessment, and integrating technology in. So all these links are there, and you see them again in the slides. Take time to read through these. You may find some more helpful information. Until next week, wishing you a lovely week. We'll confirm the next presenter by tomorrow. Let's continue learning from each other. That's an association. We are here to provide this platform. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Mono. We lost him. He texted me that I think his network.
I'm back. I managed to come back.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, sir. You can give your closing remarks, then we can close the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. President. In closing, colleagues, I would want to sincerely thank all of you for your active participation during my presentation. Let's go out there and try our level best to implement CBC, especially when it comes to assessments, which in my own view, we are still somehow lagging behind. We are still testing learners using the traditional approach. With such kind of sharings, such kind of interactions, I hope we can get somewhere someday. Thank you so much and blessed evening all.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone. We'll share the recording of this. You can rewatch it if you want, as well as the slides on the LATAS platform.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.